All right, so we love episode 399 so much that we're going to have an extended cut in the right time zone because we're all on time doing timely things in a timely manner during this time of the day with Clark Monroe.
Yep.
Clark, welcome to the show, my friend.
You know what? I've always lived by the mantra that if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. And I was late. I was late.
Yeah, just not by a little bit either.
No,
Literally,
like a whole
literally though,
hour.
you were so sincere in thinking that you were on time
I
that
was
you
so
looked at us
thinking I was on time.
stone cold and said, "Guys, it's only 8:30 Eastern."
Yeah, no, it's not. It's
No,
after that.
beyond that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, everyone tuning back in, you will see this across the networks. This is a fun one. The extended cut of 199. We will now obviously talk about some Blue Jays baseball that we were waiting for Mr. Clark Monroe, as you heard last episode, praising him up the wazoo for being the incredible dad that he
Oh,
is, getting his little down. Obviously, it took this long. We had to pause and redo another episode just for him.
yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that, guys. Honestly, like I was thinking about it after our little talk we just had, and if I would have been on time, my kid would be like crying right now and like wanting to go to bed and just causing a havoc. So it wouldn't have been good either way. I messed up either way. So either way would have been bad. That's
No
what you get for
worries.
trying to book a podcast when your wife's out of town and you're a single dad in it.
Listen, buddy, hey, you know what? We kicked off last episode talking about the dad life and different things within the dad world where you just, it takes precedence no matter what. So, hey, congrats to you for being the awesome dad that you are. I know you are. So, we will now talk some Leafs and some baseball with Clark Monroe, with my co host, as always, Mr. D4 Dylan Fournier. Um, Instant gut check feeling. You heard JD Bunkus go off on the
Ooh.
radio about what the Blue Jays did not do. The bare minimum, he said, was Syndergaard, and even that was the low bar for him. And they couldn't achieve that. Clark Monroe, calm down. Blue Jays Nation right now. Let us know because apparently anyone who thinks these deals are good are just idiots.
Yeah, I saw JD Bunkus on Twitter, so I didn't hear his segment, but I knew that he was going to rip into them pretty hard. What I heard from John Morosi, and if you don't follow John Morosi, he's one of the better baseball insiders on Twitter, so please go follow John Morosi. He basically said, yeah, the Jays improved, but they didn't improve enough. They didn't do enough. The gap is now wider than it was before between the Jays and the Yankees for sure, but also Houston, the Astros down in the AL South. Wait, what are they in? AL West. They're in the AL West. Um, I always get the AL and NL mixed up with the NFC and the AFC in the NFL, but regardless,
Easy to do.
so I know what I believe the Jays did with these moves, and I'm looking at other moves made around the AL specifically because as much as some of the NL ones are splashy, like I see that Dylan's wearing the Padres hat. The Padres did like 100 things today and within the last few days. Um, but and like big things. And I think a lot of Jays fans are jealous, which I think is mostly what all of this is that I think a lot of Jays fans are upset, but I think most of it's just jealousy because they wanted the Juan Sotos and they wanted the Syndergaards, they wanted Iglesias. And I don't think many are looking at what they did get, and they haven't. If they have looked at what they did, they don't know who the guys are because, let's be honest, Zach Pop is 25. He hasn't made an impact in the league yet. Mitchell White, 27. He's pretty young. Anthony Bass, when he was here before, Jays fans are remembering when he pitched for a team that wasn't all that great, so they're not remembering much, even though he put up good numbers when he was here, and he's also putting up good numbers this season for the Marlins. And the other player that they got is who I'm forgetting. Whit Merrifield. And Whit Merrifield's a guy that I personally love. I've been a huge Whit Merrifield fan since they made those runs back in the mid 2010s. The Royals did, and Whit Merrifield was always making an impact. And again, this was 6 or 7 years ago now. Whit Merrifield's 33, but he still led the league in stolen bases last year. Career-wise, he's like a 280 to 300 hitter. He led the league in doubles last year. He can play center field, second base, probably other positions as well. And when I look at the Jays, what they've done as a whole, I think personally that, yeah, they've gotten better. But the problem was that they didn't make that big name splash. And I think that's where a lot of people are just like, well, why wouldn't you? Why didn't you? That's a complicated question. I think that we can get into that a little bit more here as we go. And we'll get, like I said, we'll talk about that. But I honestly think that they tried. And sometimes the prices are just too crazy. And you have to remember this, a lot of people forget that it takes two to tango, sometimes three, depending on the trade. And maybe let's look at the Angels, for example. Noah Syndergaard. Everyone wanted Noah Syndergaard back on the Jays because he started there. The R.A. Dickey trade. The storylines are endless. But Noah Syndergaard's on the downslide of his career. Like, he has been great. He's lost about 5 or 6 miles an hour on his fastball. And the comparable trade that I was looking at, they got Mickey Moniak and a minor leaguer. So the comparable would have been Cavan Biggio and probably a AAA player that they probably could call up at any time. That was kind of the comparable sort of in the trade. And maybe that doesn't sound like a crazy amount, but when it's that and you're trying to get other guys talking about in trades as well, it just doesn't all add up sometimes. And there's a lot of high prices this summer for the trade deadline. And the Jays probably had enough to do some of those. But if you're talking about a top prospect that the Jays have in their system for like a relief pitcher, that's not good asset management. We can sit here and talk about asset management for hours, guys, but that's just not good asset management in baseball. There's a winter coming up where the Jays can probably make a huge move. The Yankees are going to be in turmoil. Aaron Judge's contract is under consideration. They're getting older and older, right? I'm not saying the Jays are going to go get Aaron Judge here. Calm down, Dylan. But there's a winter. I always think of summer as the off season because of hockey, but there's a winter coming up where I think that the league is going to shift. We look at what the Angels just did. They just depleted their system. They can't waste Ohtani, right? They can't waste Ohtani. They have nothing there anymore. There's a couple of players, but they basically just decided to tank the rest of the season. They traded away their center fielder. They traded away their closer. They traded away one of their starting pitchers. Like, they sold hard. There's a shift coming in the offseason, and I think the Jays are understanding that the Yankees are otherworldly good this year, like dominatingly good this year. Is that a word, dominatingly? Sure, it is now. That's how good they are. They got better at the deadline. They paid a heavy price to do it. And I think Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro had to look in the mirror for this one and just say, maybe this isn't the year we deplete our entire system to just end up getting the wild card spot in the playoff run. Like, we're just going to get a wild card spot. There's no way we're catching the Yankees. We're gonna get better and good enough that we can compete in that wild card series. But if you're not going to win your pennant and you're going to deplete your entire system for a rental who's probably gone, is it worth it? I think they had to ask some hard questions today. I don't think this was just as easy as they got outspent by other teams. I think that they had to ask some hard questions and say, is this the year we do this? Or do we maybe wait until the winter and load up for next year? And maybe next year's that year. This year's the year we compete, maybe try to win a round. Because baseball is hard, man. Especially playoff baseball. It is hard. And it's a point where if you get in, you get into the dance and you never know who you're going to meet. But you have to ask some hard questions, because if you deplete your entire system, you got nothing left. So I think that's what happened today. And I still think they made some nice trades. All of the guys that they traded for. This is a big roundabout way of me saying I think all the guys they traded for are controllable. Even Whit Merrifield, he's an arbitration eligible player, I think, for next season. So technically he's controllable to an extent. You can bring him back next year, and I still think he's a valuable piece. He's one of those guys, on broadcast when they say this guy's a real baseball player. That's Whit Merrifield. It sounds like a stupid comment, but I understand. He's a true baseball player, and he's top to bottom, he lives baseball. He gets dirty. He can do all the little things that baseball players do to win games. And so I think that Jays fans are instantly going to love Whit Merrifield as a player. My biggest thing is that I think this is going to allow George Springer to get off the field so he stops getting hurt every 2 innings and DH more often. I've been saying all summer that I don't want them to DH, and I know a lot of people love Danny Jansen, but I don't want them to DH their catchers. I'd rather them just use their catchers as catchers and DH some of their players, such as a George Springer, or give Teoscar Hernandez a day off, or give Vladdy a day on DH, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd rather see that personally. And the 3 relievers that they got, they needed reliever help. Mitch White is like a Ross Stripling type of pitcher, starting pitcher. He's started 10 games this year. He's also shown in 5 relief appearances this year. He's put up an under 4 ERA, which is solid. He's 27, controllable for years. Zach Pop, 25, controllable for years. And Anthony Bass, like I said earlier, he's cheap. He's been putting up great numbers, and he fits in the locker room already because everyone already knows him. So I think this is good. I think it's I'm going to say like a B minus in terms of the trade deadline. Other teams did more, sure. But in terms of what the hard questions were, I think they did pretty good.
All right. Let me play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
You all remember when Jose Bautista was here, and I believe it was Jansen, different Jansen at that time. When the trade deadline came around, the Blue Jays didn't do a whole hell of a lot. And then all of a sudden, things started not going the right way. I understand this is a younger team. I understand these players may see it the same way you're presenting it. But from what I heard on the Blue Jays broadcast and the Blue Jays at noon, that these guys were walking around, watching the TV, waiting for something exciting to pop. And all the things that you said, yeah, maybe fine and great. But when you're a guy who's on the diamond, on the team playing, you want an impactful name to boost this team. Yeah. And I'm not saying what they did isn't good, because I believe you. I fully take what you say at face value. I've seen it across the internet. Anyone who's covering baseball is saying the same things that you are, and I believe you 100%. But if you're a player in that room and you watch the Yankees, you watch all the teams around you load up and get bigger names and bigger guys and spend the capital to do so, doesn't that just sit with you like, did we not do enough? Are we not doing enough? And the thing that worries me is some of these guys on the team, we just watched it with Johnny Gaudreau in hockey. Maybe they say, hey, maybe the Blue Jays are just too small market and scared to pull the trigger, so we're going to go play somewhere else when it comes time. Does that factor into decisions?
Yeah, I think you're not far off. But I think, James, we have to also look at what they've done the last couple of years. I think that mindset is slipping away. They brought in George Springer for the big ticket contract. They brought in Hyun-Jin Ryu for the big ticket contract. They were able to make the Matt Chapman move, which was a big move for prospects earlier this year. You know, they've done that kind of move recently. They brought in, now this hasn't really worked out a ton yet, but they did the Yusei Kikuchi contract, 3 years, $16 million per year. So they have been spending money. I think they've shown that. And I think that this move is going to be, it's going to last a while because, like I said, all these guys are under contract for next year, or controllable at least. I think somebody in the comments here on my side said that Whit Merrifield, try saying that 10 times, Whit Merrifield has an option year next year. So I'd have to get some clarification on what that exactly means for him, but there's a nice chance that he's going to be back next year anyways for the Jays. And this just puts them in a better foundation to make a big splash next year because they have more players under control that are major league players now, and they're deepening their roster. What I compared this to, one of my buddies said the exact same thing, James, that you just said. You know Max, my buddy Max. We were talking earlier today. Max Ritz, and he was kind of on the sky is falling train as well. Kind of upset that not enough was done. And
I don't think the sky. Don't get me wrong. I don't think the sky is falling. I know. Playing the devil's advocate of what a player may think.
Totally, exactly. And when I think back to when Mark Shapiro was in Cleveland, right before he came to Toronto, Cleveland, what they did for years was added guys with term and control, which made their roster deeper and stronger, that made them able to make big moves when it was the right time to do so. And I think back to the year they went to the World Series. I was going to say the Grey Cup for some reason. CFL's on the mind. When they went to the World Series back in 2016, they played against the Cubs. They lost, but they went out and added Andrew Miller. Remember how dominant Andrew Miller was for a season. They went out and added a Coco Crisp. They went out and added these veteran guys at the right time when they knew that they were ready to make a strong push. And they're in their division. Baseball's such a divisional sport where if you can't win your division, it's almost like there's no point because you're going to have to go through the wild card and it's always harder. Well, they were the Indians at the time. The Guardians, they built. They got a young Jose Ramirez. They got a young Francisco Lindor. I was just looking at the roster, so I was just checking it out today.
Fresh in mind.
They had Mike Napoli at first base. They had Yan Gomes was just hitting his stride at catcher. They had Carlos Santana on that roster. They had some really good players, and they had a strong 1 through 5 starting rotation. Again, some young guys. And then they went out and they added the big bullpen arms and they added some solid roster guys at the end of the year. That was their year to do it. I think that this was the year that the Jays said, let's build towards that year. And when it is that year, let's go for it. But it's not the year because the Yankees are just stupid. They're stupid. Let's be honest. The Yankees, this is one of the best teams we've seen in baseball in years. And it's just, that is how it is. They are so dominant top to bottom. They just went out and added more. So is it worth it to spend all of these assets on guys who are just going to leave in free agency next year? Like a Noah Syndergaard, who knows if he sticks around. Raisel Iglesias is aging. He's getting older. He's lost miles per hour on his fastball. He's expensive for the next 3 years, this year and 2 more. And you can go down the list on other guys that got traded today. But I just don't think this was the year for the Jays. And I think that they had to realize that. And that's the tough part about being a GM is that you can't always do what the players on your team want you to do because then you'd be trading everybody all the time for everybody. And that's just not how baseball works if you want to be a sustainably good franchise. And I think that's been Shapiro and Atkins' MO from the beginning is sustainable success. And when it's time to strike, it's time to strike. And it's just clearly not the year for them.
We got a question coming in here. Need some clarification on how the wild card teams will play in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's they changed it, and I'm still trying to wrap my head kind of around the new change. It's 12 teams now. It used to be 8. It was 10 last year, and it's 12 now. So my understanding is the top 2 teams in each conference get a bye. So the Yankees and Houston will get a bye, and then 4 other teams will play off. So 2 will play 6, 3 will play 4 in a smaller series. And then the winners of those 2 series will then play the top 2 teams. And I think at one point they were discussing the top team picking their opponent. Do you remember that conversation?
I think do remember that conversation,
yeah. They decided not to, but man, would that have been a spectacle if the Yankees come up. They're the top team and the Blue Jays and the Twins are there and they say, we want to play the Blue Jays or whatever. Imagine that press conference. Oh, that would be fun. And
you have to do it LeBron style.
Yeah. Imagine the bulletin board material that would come out of it too. Like, oh my gosh, it'd be insane. But they didn't do that. So let's say right now, if the Jays finish in the top wild card spot, they would play, I don't know who it would be. Let's say it's like the Chicago White Sox, just for an example. And then Minnesota's probably right now looking like they might finish in that second wild card spot, or like Toronto, Minnesota might interchange. They would play the 5th place team, whoever that would be. I don't know who it would be at this moment. Maybe let's say the Boston Red Sox. I don't know. The Rays. Let's say the Rays. Might be the Rays. So let's say those 4 teams play off. Whoever wins those. Whoever the highest seed is would play the 2nd place team, which at this point would be Houston. Whoever the lowest seed team is would play the Yankees. So I think that's how it would work out. I don't know if it's bracket style. Like it might be bracket style, like the NCAA, where March Madness, where regardless, the Yankees are playing whoever wins the 4 versus 5 matchup, and regardless, the Astros would play the 2 versus 6 matchup. I'm not sure. But I think it's something along those lines. So, anyways, that's how it works. There's 12 teams now instead of there used to be only 8. It used to be the 3 division winners and 1 wild card team. Now it's the top 2 teams in the conference, so division winners, and then the third division winner would then be one of the wild card teams almost to an extent because they would have to play in that first round. So that's a somewhat explanation of how it's going to work.
Sounds so complicated.
Yeah,
Way
it
more
kinda is.
complicated than the
It'd be-
NHL. Why can't you make it that simple?
Yeah, well, because the thing with baseball is it's an elitist sport, right? They don't want half the league getting into the playoffs. They just want the elite teams. I think there was a lot of pushback on even expanding it at all because they want the best teams to be the only teams. They want the division winners and 1 extra. Like that was the thing for years, and they didn't want to increase that, but they got some pushback from some owners. They're like, yeah, well, guess what? We never make the playoffs, so this sucks. So I think they just said,
let's get
"Can we
some
please just-"
revenue.
Yeah, honestly, it's better for the league if more teams make it to the playoffs. So let's just do that instead of crushing everybody every year. There's only, half the league, well over half the league wasn't making the playoffs. It was almost 20 teams were making the playoffs. So, anyways,
Jeez.
that's how it works.
No, it makes complete and utter sense. And if it doesn't, it'll make sense soon once October and September roll around for playoffs. Now for the Blue Jays, everybody wants to know the $1 million question here. Is this a team that can maybe put on a run? If everything falls the way that it should and all the teams are loaded up around them, can the Blue Jays put it together and beat a Yankees team? Can they beat other teams around them? Or are we just going to enjoy the fact the Blue Jays will probably make it in, get a few games, and we'll see you next year?
Yeah. Well, I think that they definitely have a team that can win that first round, especially if they're the top wild card team and they play the 6th place team, wherever that is. Because right now you're looking at a 6th place team that is probably going to be from it might be a Seattle, which would be interesting if it was Robbie Ray versus the Jays in the playoffs. That'd be so good. But if it was Seattle or like the White Sox, or if it's even one of the teams in the AL East right now, which they're playing the Rays tonight. The Red Sox made some moves. They're super weird. I don't get it. It's not going to be the Orioles. So it's probably going to be one of those 4 teams, more or less. Maybe a little bit, maybe a couple other teams sneak in or do something at the end of the year. But I definitely think that they're at least good enough. If you're thinking about, if it's a 5-game series, you're thinking about throwing Manoah, Gausman, Barrios as your 3 guys, and you're rotating them. Those guys give you a chance to win for sure. The hitting's good enough, and adding Whit Merrifield makes it a little bit deeper. So the hitting should be good enough to win games. They've been more aggressive on the base pass since Charlie Montoyo left. So that's how playoff baseball is usually won. You have to add in the small ball component. You have to add in clever base running, and defense is obviously huge in the playoffs. And I think they got better at that. So I definitely think that they have a team that can win around. And as a Toronto fan, that's hard to say because A, we don't get to the playoffs, and B, we have troubles in first rounds. The Jays are a little different when they get there. They usually do a little bit of damage. But at the same time, they haven't gotten there since 2016. So it's been a while. Well, I shouldn't say that. They have gotten in kind of in the play-in games and stuff like that the last couple seasons, but not last season. They just missed out. But they're right there. They're on the cusp, and I think it might be some learning curve for some of these younger guys, but they do have at least the firepower to put together a playoff roster, and I think get close. If they do win the first round, if it all works out the way they want it to, they'll probably play Houston. So you're looking at guys like Justin Verlander, Framber Valdez, who's having a great season. Luis Garcia is the pitcher who's having a great season. He's young. That's probably going to be the guys you see in the playoffs. So it's not going to get any easier with Houston. They have a great bullpen. They have a great lineup. I mean, it's tough, man. I went, now, Dylan, you were there. I was in Toronto earlier this year. They did win 2 games against Houston. So, I mean, that was in April, May. So
Yeah, May,
not quite October. And I think Houston's, they've shored up a couple things too. So I don't know. It'd be really tough. But like they say, if you get to the dance, then who knows? Anything can happen once you're in the playoffs. If a couple guys get hot, if a couple pitchers get hot, it could be anything. So it's hard to say. I'm not going to say that they're sitting here as powerhouses right now, but I would say it looks better than it did a couple weeks ago.
So clip that and just take the word "not" out of there when you put this in post. And they are powerhouses, and they
are
run through.
They're so good.
They're beauts, absolute studs. No, I agree with you. Look, I look at this team, and I say it's going to be some playoff growth. It's going to be some getting to big stages growth for some of these guys too, and feeling that. We talking about it a lot in hockey, but getting to feel that, crowd, getting to feel that pressure. These guys need to feel it, and you never know what can happen with a team too. You could end up winning. You could all come together. Pieces could start flying. Guys could start dropping on the other squad. You never know, right? So we shall see.
Yeah.
But we're going to do a pivot from the Blue Jays over to our other Toronto team, which is the Maple Leafs. So
no, I won't go backwards.
Padres went backwards. The Blue Jays went backwards. Look at these guys. All right. So Maple Leafs make some moves, shore up the goaltending. Samsonov, you got Murray, you got Calle Yarncroke. What are you feeling about this team? Still have not signed the Sandman yet, but there's lots of ways that they can finagle the cap to make it work. And there's also the potential of they've staggered contracts so well, they can go out and get a guy that will put them over an LTIR and be able to breathe anyways. So they know what they are going to do. For you, Maple Leafs, where are you at? How do you feel? And should there be concern in the crease?
I mean, yeah, I think the easy answer is to say yes. The easy answer is to say yes. No, I'm saying that's the easy answer. That's not the answer I'm giving. The easy answer is to say yes, and I think at face value, a lot of people are worried because they saw Matt Murray struggle at times last season and the season before that. I think a lot. There he is. I think a lot of people are judging Ilya Samsonov without actually. I don't know if many people watched Washington last year that are saying he's not good. He at one point, not that long ago, he's only had 3 seasons. At one point, he was being talked about as like Vasilevsky, like that was the level. They were the same general area of class in Russian goalies, and he was being looked at in potentially that level of goaltender. Now, has he gotten there yet? No, but he's had a couple of decent seasons as kind of like a 1A, 1B starter with the Washington Capitals. I'm going to keep talking here. I'm just letting my dog outside, guys. We'll keep going here. He's just bugging me too much. I got to get him out of the house or else he's just going to keep bugging me. So, I mean, I think in terms of a tandem, we haven't seen what these guys can do as a tandem yet. So it's hard to it's literally starting from scratch. We don't even have one guy from last year that we're bringing back. So it's like a fresh slate, a completely starting from scratch kind of situation. And we're not used to that. And I think that leads to even more hesitation because nobody knows. Nobody knows. You can't sit here. Nobody can sit here and tell me right now on August 1st that anybody knows what this tandem is going to for sure be like next year. Not a single person, not even Matt Murray, not even Ilya Samsonov can tell me exactly what they're going to do because we haven't seen it. We don't know how many games each guy's going to play. We don't know what kind of workload these guys are going to get. Who's going to see the worst team on a back-to-back? We don't know that. So it'll be really interesting. In terms of the rest, nice shorts. Thanks, Meyer. They're actually great shorts, by the way. I got them at Sport Check. Not a sponsor.
Not yet.
But not yet. The new goaltending staff, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. They did shift that. And I think that we've seen in the last couple of years, not the best performances season long out of goaltenders. And I'm talking back to Freddie Anderson, the others that were around, then Jack Campbell. Even when they got hot, they were hot, but it wasn't sustained. It didn't last very long.
No,
so
it dipped quickly.
And I don't know if that was, I think it's always easy, scapegoat could be the coach or whatever, but I don't know what was going on that they couldn't seem to put it together for longer than a month at a time, or like a stint in the playoffs for 6 out of 7 games or whatever. So I don't know if that was Steve Briere, because I know before Steve Briere, it was who was the goalie coach that they fired? He was French. Do you guys know who I'm talking about? James, you remember that name? Who was the goalie coach for the Leafs before Steve Briere?
Francois Allaire.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And he is now somewhere. I can't remember where, but they're doing good. I remember seeing his name on a team that I was like, oh, he's their goalie coach. Why did we fire him? So I think a fresh look is always a good thing, especially if there's been some like inconsistencies. So getting a new coach in there, basically a new program, goaltending program. They've hired a couple new guys to kind of Curtis Sanford. Curtis Sanford's like the kind of day-to-day boots on the ground coach, and then they got the new director of goaltending. And I have to shore up my names because I'm not sure exactly who everybody is, but they've revamped that whole system basically. So again, on top of that, we don't even know how these goalies are going to be coached. So how do we make predictions on it? So there's my long answer of saying I'm not too sure.
Listen, I look at this goaltending tandem, and I get so much crap for it. I've gotten so much crap for it. I think Matt Murray bounces back. I think Samsonov.
Why not?
Like, exactly. What do we have? Like you just said, what do we have to go on?
Yeah.
You look at last year, okay, but I can go back and say, look at when he won 2 cups. He's not too far removed from that.
And there's been this narrative, and it's bothered me, and I know you guys have gotten it on your videos as well. But the Leafs, they've done nothing to improve their defense. Their defense is still brutal. That narrative is like 4 years old. Like, it's not current.
They were
their team
top 3 or 4 in the
top
league.
3.
Yeah.
I mean, they have some blow-ups. They have some games that aren't great. But if you literally watch hockey at all, every team. And their team defense overall, and this comes from even Sheldon Keefe taking over from Mike Babcock, their team defense in terms of their entire structure has gotten so much better in the last couple of years. And they've been through like weird seasons where they haven't been able to practice a whole lot. Last season was their first season where they've had a training camp.
Who's been saying that about Keefe and Dubas, though? That was their first full year. And everybody's like, well, they've been behind the Dutch for 3 years. No, they haven't.
Yeah.
It has not been 3 full years.
We could do a whole episode on like lazy narratives around the Leafs. Like another one is like, oh, they're running it back. It's like, no, guys, they've made tons of change. It's already a much different team this year. Last year was a much different team than the year before. Exactly. Exactly. We got Mark Giordano for the whole year. Timothy Liljegren's a year older. Like things are different. Right now, in terms of the team, I'm personally kind of in like a limbo, like a purgatory. Like I don't quite know what to commit to in terms of how I feel about it because it's not done yet. And there hasn't been much news in terms of the last few pieces that need to happen. Like you said earlier, Sandine, Engvall's contract came through, but it's confusing too. There's things like, what's Nick Robertson going to be? Is Alex Kerfoot going to be the second line winger? Is Jake Muzzin going to be around? Is Justin Hall going to be around? Who's going to be like is the third line going to be Kampf with Yarncroke and Engvall, or is that going to be the fourth line? Are they going to bring in some crazy name like Jonathan Taves? Probably not. I'm just saying stuff. But hey, I heard some rumors that Colorado might go get Taves, so it's not that crazy.
You can bring in some guys on PTOs too. Hello, Bozak. Hello, Subban.
Yes. Yeah. Shout out to Div. Shout out to D. He's so pumped about Bozak maybe coming back. But yeah, I'm kind of in a spot right now where I don't mind most of the things that have happened so far. I didn't mind losing Mikheyev for 16, 18 million or whatever it was over 4 years. Totally good with that. Go ahead. I didn't mind some of the other stuff that kind of moved around. I love the Mrazek move to get rid of that contract and just move down 13 spots. There's been a lot of things where I've genuinely liked what they've done, but there's just some serious question marks where I just don't quite know how to feel yet about the entire situation as a whole. Does that make sense?
Let me tell you how you can feel a little bit about the goaltending situation. Anyways, there's a team named the Carolina Hurricanes who shipped out all their goalies last year and brought in 2 new goaltenders. One being
Yeah.
hurt, and Freddie Anderson, who no one knew what was going to happen with him and what to expect with Freddie. And then Antti Raanta, who, again, was a guy that everyone was really high on when he was young, and he kind of fell to the wayside. Wow, doesn't that sound like what the Leafs have this year? But except because it was Carolina, there is a shit ton of optimism. But here in Toronto, we're so used to just beating dead horses and saying, oh, it sucks. This guy sucks. It's a stupid move, that you don't see the tree for the forest. So you look at this and you say, look at what Carolina was able to do. And here's the thing that Freddie didn't have that Matt Murray had. Matt Murray went on a little bit of a run before the end of his season. Freddie didn't.
No.
So I'm just saying there's a lot of parallels there. The NHL is a copycat league. Obviously, the Leafs seen something. It's only 2 years of Murray, 1 year of Samsonov. You get what you want out of Samsonov, maybe you sign him. Maybe him and Shalgren become the guys.
Right.
Or Hiddleby, or the Hopey Baker guy. I can't remember his name for the sake of my life.
Dryden McKay.
There you go. But there's so many different things. But you look at what they did, it is a clear-cut copy of what Carolina did, except Carolina was lauded for it, and Toronto isn't. So I say, look, it worked. So where'd they go last year? How far did they make it last year, folks? A lot farther than the Leafs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if Freddie was apparently broken down and no good in Toronto, got to Carolina and looked like an all-star again, I'm wondering what Matt Murray can do with the Leafs training staff and new goaltending coaches.
Well, and that's kind of what I was kind of referring to earlier. I guess I didn't quite finish what I was saying about Murray and the goaltending coach and the team defense and stuff. The whole team defense thing, I got off on a tangent there. But everyone says, one of the things is, well, yeah, Matt Murray played well when he was on Pittsburgh and their defense was so good. Do you guys remember their defense in the playoffs when they won the second Stanley Cup? It was Letang and Ron Hainsey.
Hainsey was a top-flight defenseman because they had so many damn injuries. Yep.
Yeah, it was pretty much those two, and that was it. Go look at the roster. So, listen, the Oli Mata was there too, I think, at that point. But I think the Leafs defense is more than formidable to play in front of these guys. It's just a matter now of, are their heads in the right spaces? What kind of coaching are they going to get? How can they put the best system around them that puts them in the best position to be successful? So I think that's where we're at. Good question. Good question with Robertson. I want to do one thing, if you guys don't mind, and this won't take long. It's just going to be, let's look at the positives if we can, because I know everyone's thinking negative. What's this bad thing that's happened? I don't like this thing. Austin Matthews won MVP last year. Do we forget that? 60 plus goals, over 100 points. Mitch Marner, 97 points. William Nylander, career high in points. Michael Bunting, career high in points. Morgan Riley bounced back in a big way. What did he end up with? 70? Something like that.
72, I think.
TJ Brody had a great year.
Defensively,
Timothy Liljegren showed huge strides. Mark Giordano was playing at like a 50-point pace after joining the Leafs. They have a lot. David Kampf, we talked about this a year ago today, pretty much, about how much we were going to love David Kampf at the end of the year, and we did. Calle Jarnkrok's coming in. That's a perfect line mate. I would say that's I don't hate Andre Kasha. That's a big upgrade over Andre Kasha. I'm just going to say right now, in terms of what he brings to that line's identity, it's perfect. Andre Kasha was kind of an in-between. I felt like he was a good forechecker and stuff, but he wasn't the perfect fit for that line as good as he was at times. I think Jarnkrok's perfect. And Engvall, guys, I hate Pierre Engvall. I've hated Pierre Engvall for 2 years. I kind of liked him at the end of the year. That's not okay. So
I told you he'd grow on you. I told you.
I know. But if you're looking at that line as a third line, I mean, I hate to make bold statements, but that could be like the best third line in terms of what they do in hockey. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're better than the third line in Pittsburgh when they had Malkin and Kessel or whatever on the third line, but like
or
that line,
Goudreau, Coleman, and Gord.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's pretty damn good. But in terms of what these guys do, it's a defensive, forechecking, hardworking third line. it could be one of the more effective, let's say, lines in the sport. Now, what
What
do
have
they
I
do with
told
their
you for a
fourth
long
line?
time that Keefe wanted, though? He wants
Yeah,
a third
exactly.
line like that.
Exactly.
He wants that.
So exactly, and I think it's going to fit perfectly into what they want. And then it just depends on how they make up the rest of their roster. John Tavares was almost a point per game last year, so I'm not too worried about the production from the
Leave
second
the
line.
man alone.
Leave the man alone. He's not getting traded. He's got a no move clause.
He is working on his speed this offseason. I saw that in an article. The
No,
man is
you're
on a
right.
mission.
You're right. I saw that too.
Yeah.
He's working on his speed, and I hope it works out. But Dylan, I've seen that headline every summer for the last like 5 years.
Listen, hang on. His first summer under Barb Underhill, when he came here to the Maple Leafs, he put up his best numbers.
Yep.
His stride was different. He was not so like rigid, and he kind of got back to that rigid kind of pace last year towards the end. And you know, my little source told me it was because he wasn't able to have a full off season of ramping up his workouts due to the injury last year.
Right.
So really, he didn't get up.
Yeah,
to
we
speed.
forget. Like a year ago, this guy had a traumatic head injury. We forget this. I forgot
that was something that
so
really
thank you for
factored
reminding
into it.
me.
But I know that
Absolutely.
he is working really hard right now and really wants to have a more impactful stride and allow himself to not be gazelle-like, because he'll never have that speed, but allow himself to not be too far behind where he needs to be. But here's the thing. If you got two speedsters, say a Robertson and a Nylander, flying in, and you're the pivot, there's no problem with you just cruising in while those two guys are being honed in on and cleaning up the mess in front of the net.
Yeah,
Just
and even
driving
Kerfoot, like
straight.
if it ends up being Kerfoot, which I mean, just looking at the money, I just don't see how it's gonna happen. But let's say Kerfoot sticks around for however they do it.
Yep.
He was fine on that. He had 50 points last year. Like he was fine. I know a lot of people are making fun of the Leafs. I know that debate went around Senators top 6 versus Leafs top 6. And the biggest thing was Kerfoot, bro. And I was like, yeah, he had 50 points. That's a pretty decent second liner in today's NHL. Like, that's not bad. Plus, he can play third line center. He can penalty kill. He was doing a lot of stuff. So I don't hate it if it is him. I want to see Nick Robertson take a step. I think we're all in that boat. I think
he's in the Timothy Liljegren situation of last year. Either take a step or get out, basically, is what it is.
Kind of, yeah. And I mean, even if he comes out and he puts up 10 goals or something in the first 30 games or whatever it is, but it's not working out, he can be traded. Like, I don't think that's good.
Robertson will be in your top 6 next year, and I guarantee, I put it out on Twitter. I said he'll score 25 to 30. That's exactly what we were told by everyone who watches Nick Robertson and thinks if he gets a fair shake with players of his own skill.
I want it to happen so bad. I want it to happen so bad. And let's just make, for argument's sake, that Kerfoot does stick around and Robertson does play second line. All of a sudden, you're looking at Kerfoot as a fourth line center with Nicolas Aube-Kubel and whoever else. That's all of a sudden a great fourth line. And I don't love paying a fourth line player $3.5 million. But all of a sudden, that's turning into a line that is another forechecking, hard to play against fourth line with guys who can play in your penalty kill and take some pressure off the top 6.
Here's another thing for your top 6 too. There's a guy that is very high on Austin Matthews' radar, and that is Mr. Matthew Knies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's
so he's another guy that is going to take a full year at school. He'll be coming in March, a full year more ready to come in and step in and make an impact.
Yeah. And I guess the biggest question, James and Dylan, maybe you guys can chime in, but let's say Kerfoot gets moved, because again, I just can't envision a scenario money-wise that he stays. What's the fourth line look like? Is it Adam Gaudette, and are we cool with that? Like Adam Gaudette with Aube-Kubel, are we good with that? Or who ends up on that fourth line? Because Simmons is kicking around, but he's not a centerman, obviously. Clifford's kicking around. We got other guys that are kicking around. Malgin, Dennis Malgin, some other guys. But are we good with that as a fourth line?
I would say Gaudette's the only. I'd say Gaudette's the only one that makes any sense.
Yeah,
I like Gaudette down there, to be honest with you. And obviously, they've seen something in him at the Worlds that made them want to sign him. So, and also you guys got to remember there was some medical condition or something that he had going on when he was last in the NHL or in the pro ranks that was undiagnosed and now has been taken care of, which is why the Leafs are taking the chance on him. So, I mean, you look at the Timothy Liljegren thing, it took a little while, but it looks like that's going to pan out. And that was a medical situation. Andreas Janssen was a guy who was in the 7th round, couldn't breathe, couldn't keep his wind. Why? Because he had undiagnosed asthma. Yeah. They got that taken care of, and look how he turned out. So same thing with Gaudette here, had a health issue. It's been identified. It's been rectified. Now he's getting a chance to show what he can do, and he may be just one of those, David Camp, Michael Bunting-esque kind of guys where he makes a damn impact.
Yeah. No, for sure. I'm not mad about it. And they needed center depth either way. So, like, even if he's the 5th or 6th center, great. That's awesome. We'll see. You said it earlier. There's going to be like probably 5 or 6 guys on PTOs coming into training camp that we haven't heard from yet. They do it every year. I don't see why this year would be any exception. If anything, there'll be more this year, I think, just with the way things are going. The flat cap, I think a lot of teams are going to be in that situation. If you go look at Cap Friendly right now, I'm not saying after the episode's over. Watch the end of the episode first. But if you go check out Cap Friendly and go to their free agency page, there's a couple big names still. Obviously, Kadri probably going to the Islanders or whatever. But outside of those top 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever names, there's not like a name that's like, oh wow, he's the piece that any team would want. But there's I'm gonna say like 30 guys at least, maybe even more, 50 guys that have NHL experience, can play a role really well, and could fit a lot of needs that the Leafs and a lot of other teams will need, but nobody can afford them. So they're going to probably get PTOs. I saw a stat the other day, and I made a video about this last year. It's worse this year. There's 17 teams over the cap right now. Or I think it was, sorry, I might be lying. There's, I think, 10 teams that are over the cap, and I think 6 or 7 or 8 others that are within $2 million. So there's 17 teams. Over half the league is basically in cap hell right now. So people say, "Oh, the Leafs have no cap space." It's a terrible chirp. I've said
Dylan,
this.
Doesn't this sound familiar?
Yeah,
I've made a video about this. Yeah.
On the first half of the episode where Clark Monroe was supposed to be here, we just had this exact same conversation. Where we said it's only the Leafs that seem to be. I was talking about the Boston Bruins actually. Only having $4.8 million, needing to sign Bergeron, Krejci, and Pavel Zacha. So we were definitely on the same page as you, Clark.
I'm late to that party, but like it's true though, and it can't be said enough that all these people like, how have Colorado not re-signed Nazem Kadri yet? They can't. How has Boston not brought back Bergeron right yet? They can't. How have all
that situation makes me so mad. For Boston fans. I hate Boston, but this is what Patrice Bergeron has done to the Bruins. He's handcuffed.
Here's the thing, though. I don't feel bad at all for Bruins fans because Bergeron did so many good things for them for so cheap for so many years. No, screw that. Screw that.
I know, but you look at it. I look at it from the pure fan perspective on that.
Yeah.
If you're my brother-in-law is a Bruins fan, so listen to him just say like, "What is he doing? What is he doing?" Like, no, you think he would tell him one way or another, just like Gaudreau and the Flames, right? Yeah. Now he may retire at the 11th hour, and the Bruins went through the whole offseason not having that cap space.
They just don't have cap space. And half the league is in the same problem, and I think that's just the flat cap. Until that stops happening and being a thing, there's going to be a lot of eye-raising things that happen. And it's like, why did that happen? Why did Max Pacioretty get traded for nothing? Because they couldn't afford him. They couldn't keep him. And Carolina somehow could. That's one thing that bothers me. How the heck did Carolina do that? Like, they're in a good situation. Well, how do they have cap space to add $7 million?
They were the team that got the Brent Burns too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not much retained either, if any.
It was half retained, I think.
Was it half? Yeah. I don't know if it was half.
Because he was being paid.
I think it's 40% retained, wasn't it?
I don't know if it was that much. I think it was lower. I think it was only like 10 or 12% maybe. I don't think it was very
I
much.
think he was being paid $8 million, and now it's down to $4 million.
Oh, it is? Okay, so maybe you're right then, 50%. But it's just like, yeah, how does Carolina afford that stuff? Like, who came off the books for them? I mean, I know
What
like
are they
paid
at?
Kotkaniemi last year too. They paid Kotkaniemi like 4.5 or whatever.
So
So
yeah, that's just silly.
where'd they get that money? Anyways, side tangent. But yeah, no, I think the Leafs are you're going to see probably 5 or 6 names that
Wow.
everyone's going to be excited about for PTOs. Like, you know, in terms of how excited you could be about a PTO, I think there's going to be 5 or 6 names that Leaf fans are like, "Oh wow, like that'll be great," and then they won't make the team. We saw that last year with Josh Ho-Sang. Like, everyone was like, "He's the best player the Leafs have." No, he's not.
No.
He's not that. He's not that good. But he never made that cut. Now he's in Russia. I hope he's safe because Russia's crazy right now. So anyways, we'll see. There's a lot of question marks. I think we'll have a really good conversation in about a month here when everything kind of settles in and we get closer to camp and stuff becomes a little bit clearer on what their plan is. But right now, I still think there's 4 or 5 pretty serious question marks that I just don't fully know yet about what it's going to look like.
We will have you back on towards camp. I can't wait.
I'll be on time next time. I'll make sure I triple check the time zones next time.
Listen, it's still fun to have you on. We got to do a double take. It's episode 399, the Redux. It doesn't matter, man. I want to say, I said on the other episode you weren't here, but I want to say I appreciate you throughout the years, man. I've now known you, I think, for what, 3-4 years now?
3. I think just coming up on 3.
So it's been a little while, but you've been on throughout. Jesus, this thing's been going since 2016. But I want to say thank you, Clark Monroe, for always opening the doors. I've been on your show, the Squad Cast, that is no longer on right now.
Right
there
now,
may be something
we'll
point
see.
somewhere.
Yeah.
But you know, and we're doing all kinds of fun things. 6 and a 6, whatever you want to do. But I want to say thank you very much for always making the time and having fun, man.
Right back at you. Right back at you too, Dylan. Shout out to Dylan.
I'd also like to thank you for not pressuring me into, but you made me start my TikTok account. And
I peer pressured you into starting, and I feel good about that decision.
There's some good peer pressures that go on, right?
Yeah,
it's led into wonderful things, especially the group that we have that we've been messaging. So, yeah, thank you, man.
Absolutely.
No, it's been a good time.
I knew you were the right one to do it, so that's why I wouldn't have peer pressured you if you weren't the right one. So you're my Neo. You're my Neo from the Matrix, Dylan.
There you go. Look at that. Look at the references. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you literally sat through over 90 minutes tonight of us talking about the Maple Leafs, the Blue Jays, ambulances not showing up, all the different things we've gone through. So I want to say thank you yet again. This is episode 399, the extended cut. Next one is 400. Ring the bell, bring the balloon, celebrate with one of these from Boxing Rock Brewing Co. It is a puck off lagered ale. Be sure to get one of those into you when you're out east. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Offside Hockey Talk, signing off for episode 399, where hockey comes to talk.